If there was such a thing as the end of a week, and this was the start of it, how would it sound? Like this. The Championship returns, and that's our battleground for both naps this week. League One, next best, 5-1 and 10-1 long shots, and a 9-1 unders quad. It's the NTT20 betting show sponsored by AK Bets. It's very strictly for over 18s only. We're making betting picks, and betting comes with significant risks. Head to gambleaware.org to brush up on those risks. I'm Alessandro Maxwell, and he's George Elek. Hello, mate.
Georgie Elek, I think I am, aren't I?
Because of your maybe potential goal scorer pick. Interesting.
Yeah, that was staring at you right in the face, and you have bungled it.
Plenty to look forward to on a full slate weekend of action. Last week, I got my nap and my next best up. That was Stockport at 11-10 against Wrexham. Northampton double chance at 7-5 against Blackpool. Lincoln 1-0 or 2-0 long shot. That was a frustrating watch, foiled by Whitworth in the first half and plenty of territory in the second, but no execution. Kieran Green, 2 half chances in the first 20 minutes against Newport, then nada after that. And George, it was 3 losers and a next best draw no bet push for you. So make it right with a nap this weekend. Where are you going?
Yeah, my nap is Bristol City draw no bet at home to Burnley. I'm very surprised to see Burnley kind of short price favourite. Well, not short price, but like significant favourites to win this game for a few reasons. I don't think their performances and results have been particularly good so far. The results have been pretty good, but the performances, as we've spoken about on the Monday show, haven't been great. And Bristol City have been pretty impressive. They've only lost one game going back to September the 14th. And that one game that they lost was a 2-1 defeat at home to Sheffield United, where they were 1-0 up. And then Rob Dickie got sent off and they conceded 2 late goals and things kind of fell apart. So to be taking the draw out and still be able to back Bristol City to win this game, just on that alone, kind of appeals. But then you've got this funny quirk with their manager, Liam Manning. And his record against good teams throughout his career is really strong. And I think if you look back through his time at MK Dons, there was that famous 5-0 win over Sheffield Wednesday as they were kind of edging towards the playoffs at the end of that season. Then you look at what happened in the second season where he was sacked at MK Dons in December. I think there's probably an argument to say that part of that reason was because teams understood the quality of MK Dons and approached a very different mentality in the way that they played against them after that. Look at his time at Oxford, where they went to Derby and beat them 2-0 amongst some other good results against decent teams, struggled to break teams down, such as losing on opening day against Cambridge, who sat in very deep. And then, kind of most pertinently, you look at his time so far at Bristol City, where last season at Ashton Gate, Liam Manning's Bristol City beat Leicester, who finished first. They beat Southampton 3-1, who finished fourth. They beat Hull 3-2, who finished seventh. They beat Borough 3-2, who finished 8th. They also beat Borough 2-1 away from home. When they hosted West Brom at home, they drew the game 0-0. And even the 3 defeats, the 2 defeats, because when Manning was in charge, they had at home against Norwich and Leeds were just by a solitary goal. You then look to this season, and yes, they lost 2-1 to Sheffield United, but as I say, 1-0 up for the majority of that game, and deservedly so until the red card. They also hosted Leeds, and they drew 0-0. And given how strong Leeds have been this season, that's impressive. Millwall, one of the better teams in the league this season, they beat early in the campaign 4-3, albeit a different kind of test. And then Borough, a couple of weeks ago, they went and beat 2-0 away from home. So, it is striking that Liam Manning enjoys playing against teams who are generally pretty good. I would say it's normally teams who dominate possession. It's teams who are happy to play with a high line. And in part, it's because he recruits players who are and uses players who are very, very good in transition. But in part, it's because he can build a side who are incredibly happy to sit without the ball in shape and restrict the opponents to very, very little. And this is an issue for Burnley because, even though Burnley have picked up some decent results this season and are pretty lofty in the table, they aren't a team that score many goals. They aren't a team that create very much, especially on the road. Since their first 2 games where they scored 4 and 5, since then they've only scored 2 goals on 2 separate occasions, no more than 2 goals, a fair few blanks, 4 0-0 draws. I think this is like a really awkward game for Scott Parker to go into, where against teams who aren't quite as well, against teams who haven't got this record that Manning's side have, haven't got this ability that Bristol City have. They've come unstuck, and I think they're going to really struggle to break Bristol City down. We've seen them in recent weeks take a man out of midfield and play another man up top, which might help their attacking output. But even so, last time we saw them against Swansea, it took a very, very late goal from the spot in order to get them home in that game. And in another game that looked like it was drifting towards a 0-0 in open play. Bristol City have players who we've seen fairly consistently who are good in transition, whether that's Mehmeti or Sinclair Armstrong when he starts, obviously another one who's really good at exposing a high line. And for the most part, at home, they find a way to break teams down. But only one defeat so far this season. Yes, they've only won 2 games against Bristol City against Oxford and Millwall. But when you consider they've also held Leeds, it's a pretty good body of work. So I personally think, on the basis of what we've seen so far this season and the matchup between Manning and Parker, and the record that Manning has in games of this ilk, I think Bristol City should be favourites to win this game, and they're not. And given their good defensive record and given Burnley's issues in front of goal, I find it hard to imagine, unless they have a real, one of those days where everything goes in, that Burnley are going to rack up a score. So, if we're bringing the goal line down to backing Bristol City draw no bet feels the way to play this, rather than just backing them to win at 2-1. So, AK Bets, our sponsors, as ever, have gone best price for all of our selections. That is even money for Bristol City draw no bet at home to Burnley.
Yeah, my nap is Millwall to beat Sunderland at 6-4. It kind of feels a little bit like there are some parallels in our nap selections here. That is taking on teams who are both in the top 6 and sort of well fancied, if you like, and started the season well, with teams who we perceive to be in really strong form and showing a lot of potential in 8th in Millwall's case and 10th in Bristol City's case. In terms of Sunderland, what I would say is both of their defeats this season have been away from home. They have lost the XG battle in 4 of their last 5 away games. But this is also massively about their absences. Sunderland have benefited from having a really settled unit this season. You can pretty much pick the starting 11. It rolls off the tongue, right? And of that starting 11 from the first 14, 15 games of the season, they are missing Jobe Bellingham, suspended. Try Hume, suspended. Patrick Roberts, suspended. That's Try Hume and Patrick Roberts, their right side. They are missing Romain Mundle, injured. Alan Brown, injured. So they are light in midfield. They are missing their 2 first-team wide attackers. They are missing their right back, Hume, who's also a real leader for them. I don't want to overdo any anti-Sunderland performance-based stuff, because they are a good team and they have been a good team all season. But those absences and the fact that away from home, they're certainly not as strong as they look at the Stadium of Light, led me to Millwall, because it's more about them. I really, really like them. I've tried to make that clear over the last few weeks. We were slower on it than we should have been, given that straight out the gate this season, their underlying performance numbers were really, really strong. And the results have followed. They're unbeaten in 7. They've won 4 and drawn 3. And I just think if this was a team with a sexier name and a bigger budget that had put together the performances that they have this season, they'd be being taken more seriously. I basically think, looking back at all their games this season, there are 2 games where I think they've not really been at it. That was Bristol City away, where they lost, was it 3-2 or 4-3? 4-3, I think. And Cardiff away, where they lost 1-0 to a set piece. Every other game, they have been, at the very least, super competitive. But I would go further and say in the majority of them, just simply the better side, an excellent all-round team. That can be reflected in the fact that they have the highest set-piece XG in the Championship by miles, but also the 4th highest XG from open play. Defensively, they haven't conceded a goal from open play in 2 months in the league, Millwall. They've conceded only 4 goals total in 9 games, and all of them have been from either corners or wide free kicks. So no open play goals conceded in 9. And then there's the fact that home advantage, if it applies to anyone in the Championship, it's Plymouth Argyle and it's Millwall. In the last 3 and a bit seasons, 77 home games, so the 3 completed seasons plus this one as well, they've won 38, which is a 49.4% win rate. That includes a pretty poor season last year where they didn't win that many home games, but they're much better this season. They are back at it. They're at home in a big game in front of their fans, and they're in fantastic nick. My nap for the weekend. No one likes us. No one likes us. No one likes us. We don't care. Millwall to beat Sunderland at 6-4. Next best.
My next best is Stockport County to beat Burton Albion at even money. Stockport have had a very weird run of home games in both league and cup. They've had 4 consecutive home games in the league, and the results are as weird as the quirk of having that many home games in a row, where they've won 3 of them. The 3 results at home were a 4-1 win, a 5-0 win, and a 1-0 win. Just a cheeky little 5-0 defeat against Wycombe shoved in there too. I'm pretty happy to ignore that. It's an anomalous result against a very good Wycombe team who came to Edgeley Park desperate to prove that they're the real deal and absolutely did so on the day. But the way that Stockport have bounced back means I'm pretty happy to write that off as a bad day at the office. Burton coming to this, having won their first game of the season. They've made a statement to fans in the last couple of hours, basically thanking fans for their patience, saying that they won't be rushing a new appointment, and that means that Tom Hansel and John Brayford continue in caretaker charge, which is okay because they won the game to get off the mark, having struggled to do so under Mark Robinson. But I'm pretty surprised you're getting even money about Stockport here, and yes, away from home their results so far this season haven't been great, but their non-penalty XG ratio away from home this season is the second best in the league. It's only bettered by Birmingham. So yeah, they may have only won 2 games on the road, but I'm not overly concerned about that. It seems that they haven't probably been getting the rub of the green in those games, and they've only lost 1 of those, and that was a 2-1 defeat away at Lincoln, where they scored very early and tried to sit on their lead and couldn't do so, and conceded twice either side of half time. But we do have kind of data that I think is relevant when it comes to recent history in terms of what they've done away from home, where last season in League Two, they won 12 of their 23 away games. That was the most in League Two. The season before that, they won 11, which was the joint third most in League Two that season. So they are a side under Challoner who have had no issues picking up wins on the road. And I would say that 2 number that they're currently sitting on is not a fair reflection of where they'll be in terms of a ratio of away games won over the course of the campaign. They're coming up against the Burton side who, as we know, are likely to struggle this season. There's no massive reason to believe under their new caretaker manager, there's going to be a massive turnaround. Of course, a win might yield an improvement in fortunes, but they beat Shrewsbury, who are rooted to the bottom of the league and themselves didn't have a manager at the time. And also, when you look at their home form so far this season, they've played 3 teams currently in the top half of the table, Lincoln, Barnsley and Wycombe, and conceded 8 goals in the 3 games and lost all 3 of them, albeit only by a goal. But with Stockport having players such as Louis Barry in the kind of form that he's in, I don't think there's no reason in my mind to think that the team who've proven over quite a long period of time they are the better side and win games away from home wouldn't go to the Pirelli and be much the better team. I think it would be an incredible job of Hansel in order to stop that from happening. So given their due and given they're playing okay and given the quality they've got, to be kind of doubling your money about a Stockport win seems mighty fair to me. So Stockport County away from home at Burton at even money. Again, top price with AK Bets is my next best.
Yeah, mine's in League One too. It's Bolton to beat Blackpool at 10-11. Continuation of the anti-Blackpool stance that paid last weekend as they failed to beat Northampton, and we had Cobbler's double chance at 7-5. When it comes to Bolton, they have a bit of a weird shambolic performance in them every now and then. We've seen that with big defeats to Stockport and Huddersfield this season. And I know that amongst the fan base, there are very fair concerns about whether they don't turn up to big games. And I guess a home game against Blackpool with a crowd that's going to be surely the highest in any third tier in the world this weekend, this might be considered one of those games, and therefore there'd be some nerves about whether they can step up to the plate. I still think most of the time, and certainly most of the time at home, everything about them suggests they're a very good team. In 5 of their 7 home games, they have faced 8 shots or less. So they are doing a very good job at home of suppressing the opposition and making sure that they don't face very many shots. They obviously generally have a good time with the ball, dominate possession, and I expect them to have the better of this game. They need to stop avoiding They need to avoid, rather, conceding from corners. That's 8 already in 14 games they've conceded, Bolton. But this is mainly still about Blackpool, who, I mean, since I picked against them last week, in that game against Northampton, Kyle Joseph and Jordan Rhodes came off injured. I don't think Rhodes' was an issue, but Joseph's appears to be exactly that. He's kind of their premier striker at the moment. He's looked much more suited to Steve Bruce's football, even without scoring that many goals. And he's just the latest in a number of absences, probably 4 or 5 starters from their best 11 missing at the moment. Albie Morgan, Sonny Carey, Elkin Baggett, Jake Beasley, CJ Hamilton, Andy Lyons, all reportedly set to miss the game. Plus James Husband and Kyle Joseph are doubts. Those two are massive players for them. They're struggling down their right side. And I think with Schern, the left wing back for Bolton, doing pretty well since joining in the summer, and Collins, if he starts naturally drifting down that side to combine with Schern, I think that could be a real avenue of attack for Bolton. They've also got McAtee and Dion Charles. It's just a lot of firepower, basically, against a team that we've called pretty incoherent over the last few weeks for both their defensive shape and structure, and also kind of their attacking play as well, which has looked quick and dangerous at times, but also some of the games I've watched, I mean, Lee Evans started the season in such good form. He almost seems to have too much responsibility. Like, he's just holding everything together at the moment, and his radar's been a bit off with some of his passing recently. So I'm just happy to keep getting against Blackpool. You know, I perceive their rating and their odds to be somewhat kind of pumped up by underlying numbers that are strong on a season-long basis. But it just doesn't match how I perceive them at all, having watched them a lot over the last few weeks. I think they're floundering, basically, and I think Bolton should get it done here at 10 to 11. So that's my next best. For anyone looking to sign up to AK Bets, use code NTT100. Just click the link in the show notes if you'd like, and the code will be applied once you get onto the AK Bets site. If your first bet is an accumulator on football with a minimum of 4 selections, AK Bets will boost the profit gained on that initial bet by 25% in the form of a free bet up to a value of £100. For further T's and C's, go to the website and click the link in the description of this podcast to take advantage of that sign-up offer from our sponsors, AK Bets. Who's your goal scorer this week?
Georgi Chakvatadze is my goal scorer. He is 4 to 1 with AK Bets. Again, joint top best price in the market in order to score for Watford at Argyle. And I mean, there's a recency bias to this, but I saw Chakvatadze live for the first time a couple of weeks ago when I went to Watford Oxford on a Friday night, and I was so impressed with him. I mean, I completely take that his end product could probably be better, but sometimes you watch a game of football and it is painfully obvious to anyone watching that there is a player who is too good, whose technical ability is just too good against the players that he's playing against. And it was incredibly obvious with Chakvatadze. I'd be amazed, absolutely amazed, if he's not playing top flight football in 18 months' time. He's not the youngest. He's had, times he's had injuries in his career that have seemingly stunted his progress, but there's no way he's a championship player. And I spoke to a friend of mine who's a Norwich fan earlier today, who even said in Norwich's easy win over Watford, he was the best player on the pitch that day too. He's able to get on the ball and drive into really dangerous positions. Wayward shooting, fine. His ball striking's still pretty good. And it's surprising that he's only scored 1 goal this season. His shot locations are not the best, but he's someone who has scored quite a lot of goals in his career already. He's got 9 goals in 30 odd caps for Georgia. At Dynamo, coming through the ranks, he scored a fair few goals too. He's one of those players that to me looks like at some point relatively soon, as he continues his ascent into being one of the league's top attacking talents, the goals will come. And where better than at Argyle? Argyle have to be one of the weirdest teams in the history of football this season, where away from home, that they register very little whatsoever in terms of attacking threat. They've scored 2 goals on the road all season, both of which were long-range efforts, one of which was deflected, and they barely register as an attacking force at all. But that's not the case at home, where they've beaten Sunderland 3-2 at home. They put 3 past North End in a 3-3 draw. They put 3 past Luton in a 3-1 win. They've beaten Blackburn. They've beaten Pompey. Their only defeat came at home to Stoke back in August. So their games consistently end to end. And in Watford, whilst we have a couple of games that have been kind of damp squibs, we've also seen them score 6 at Hillsborough, 3 at Millwall, and 6-2 and 3-2 wins. I basically don't see how this is anything but a really entertaining end-to-end game. I would definitely recommend anyone wondering whether to watch this game on a Friday night, wondering if they want to watch an Argyle team struggling and a Watford team who are flying high. But I think it could be a really entertaining game. Obviously, two United legends in Wayne Rooney and Tom Cleverley going head to head. But given the way that the Argyle games go at Home Park, given the amount of space that is normally there for given the way that they attack, I think this game is set up for Chapatadze to really dominate. And interestingly, our mate Luorns, in kind of analysing the Oxford game, his take on it, which I didn't notice at all, but he knows his stuff, so I'm sure he's right, was in the second half, Kayembe played much further forward in order to allow Chapatadze to kind of drop in and get on the ball in deeper areas and be on it more often. And he was a massive threat in that second half. Jamie Cumming had to make 2 saves from range. He also shot from 3 corners, which was pretty fun, 2 of them on target. I think this is, if you can bet on shot markets and the rest of it, I wouldn't put you off at all. But if this game goes away, I think it might do, where we see 4 or 5 goals in it, I'd be surprised if Georgie Chapatadze isn't making a mockery of that 4-1 price. And I think, as I say, on 1 goal now, I think he'll end up on a lot more than that at the end of the season.
To be clear, if you had correctly identified live in the ground Tom Cleverley's nuanced tactical tweaks after 5 pints ahead of a Friday 8 p.m. kickoff, I really, really would strongly think less of you.
I assume that's what Luorns did, though. So, hope you don't think any less of him.
Alassana Jatta, for the 3rd time this season, after 2 winners, is my goal scorer pick. This is at a much shorter price, 11-8 at home to Newport County. He's Notts County striker, and I'm going in again. He's just so dangerous. Notts County are shorter than 2 on best price to win at home to Newport County, that is, have the worst XG against in League Two. They concede just under 2 a game away from home so far this season. As a reminder or a refresher on Jatta, we can update the stats from last time. He's now got 12 goals in League Two at 0.77 per 90. He has scored with 26% of his shots in League Two since joining in January. Anytime has landed in 9 of his 16 League Two starts. That's 56%. And this is a price that suggests a 42.1% chance. He's a threat with his head, a threat with both feet, a handful both inside the box attacking crosses, but also running in behind. And it's a Newport side that have conceded 2 or more in 5 of their 8 away games. Notts County to score over 1.5 goals in this game is best price 4-9 and 2-5, a perceived 70% chance of them scoring 2 or more. And if they do, and Jatta hasn't had at least a couple of big chances, I'll be astounded. At 11-8, and probably for the last time before we retire this one, Alassana Jatta, my goal scorer for Notts County, at 11-8 with AK bets. What's your long shot?
My long shot is Walsall to beat AFC Wimbledon away from home at 2-0, I should say. Win 2-0 winter continues. Normally, Win 2-0 winter has been the realm of the naps or the next best, but here it turns up as a long shot. Nothing against Dons at all. A very, very good side. A side who lost 2-0 fairly recently at home against Grimsby, and a side who came 10 minutes from losing 2-0 in midweek against Accrington before scoring twice and drawing the game 2-2, albeit maybe 20 minutes because there was about 10 minutes added on at the end of the game. But even so, quite a lot of games being played in quick succession after what happened with their pitch a couple of months ago. So coming into this, having played in midweek, maybe not ideal, and also off the back of a trip to Barrow last weekend. So, you wouldn't begrudge them if they're feeling it a little bit. Interestingly, their home form this season, as we've spoken about a lot, has been so strong up until the loss to Grimsby and the draw with Accrington. They'd won all 5 of their home games up to then. But the teams they've played haven't aged very well. They're beating Colchester in early August on opening day. Beating them 4-2 looked a good result. Colchester now languishing down in 21st. In October, they beat Carlisle 4-0. Again, Carlisle's troubles down in the relegation zone is pretty obvious. They beat Morecambe 3-0. Yes, the MK Dons win is massive and is by far the standout piece of form from them at Plough Lane this season. But again, it's a game that kind of sits apart from everything else. And AFC Wimbledon seem to absolutely have MK Dons' number right now, and under Johnny Jackson, absolutely revel in beating the team that they don't want to mention. And a 1-0 win over Fleetwood, which was a relatively tight game. So there is maybe there was some element of evidence within their results that, as good as they'd been, they hadn't necessarily played top sides yet. And in Walsall, they play the team that have to be seen as one of, if not the best team in League Two so far this season. Now, I know the league table may not say that, and we can get into league tables lying and the rest of things, but I would argue that in terms of their attacking output, where they have Abbas per Fotmob, the highest XG number in the whole league, and from a defensive standpoint, where they regularly keep teams very, very quiet, and have already won 4-0 this season, 2 of which were on the road against Salford and against Swindon, 2 of which were at home against Colchester and Morecambe. They have to be right up there with the likes of Port Vale, with Doncaster, with Crewe, which is where they sit in the league table. So, taking into account Walsall's decent away form so far this season, with 3 wins on the road already, taking into account the fact that AFC Wimbledon might be understandably quite knackered off the back of a midweek game when no one else played a midweek, a trip to Barrow before that, and having had 2 consecutive games at home where they lost 1-0 and they didn't score for 82 minutes in the other, I just think Walsall might be a slice of value here. And sticking in the 2-0 with it is a way to get this up to the kind of price we need to be for a long shot. So I definitely wouldn't put you off just backing Walsall to win or Walsall draw no bet. But if they do it, it wouldn't surprise me if it's another frustrating day in front of goal for Dons.
Now, a quick one, just asking for your advice, really, before I tell you about my long shot. In a strange situation, heading into this weekend where I've got the opportunity to meet a gift horse, and I've never met a gift horse before. I was just wondering if you had any tips or any like do's and don'ts when it comes to gift horses.
Yeah, look him in the eyes.
Look him in the eyes. Okay. Anything else?
You do, don't let your eyes drop down to the mouth.
Oh, well, don't. So you're saying don't look a gift horse in the mouth?
No.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, no, thank you. Sean Raggett anytime, 10-1 for Rotherham United at Crawley this weekend. Crawley are the most disastrous defensive set-piece team in the EFL. They have already conceded 10 goals from corners alone this season. Wow. 4 centre-backs have already scored anytime this season against Crawley. 40% of their goals conceded have been from set-pieces. And coming to town is Sean Raggett, an absolute stallion up against some Shetlands. In his last 5 completed seasons, his aerial win percentage has always been in a range between 74% and 79%, which is about as good as it gets for an aerial win percentage in the EFL. The only thing that I'm finding a bit weird about Sean Raggett is he doesn't score as many goals as I think he should. And he doesn't score as many goals as someone like Aidan Flint, right? So if we're thinking of the most aerially dominant players in League One or the Championship over the last decade, I think of Flint, I think of Raggett. Now, I'm kind of interested particularly if there's anyone who really knows what they're talking about here, maybe a former professional centre-back or a current professional centre-back. But why would, for example, Aidan Flint be so much better than Sean Raggett at scoring headed goals from set pieces? I'm really interested in that. Like they broadly have the same aerial win percentage overall. So what is it about them? Because I think there's some people that would say it's basically a mental thing. It's like Flint is an absolute dog who just wants to attack everything, is like obsessed with being the aggressor, getting on the end of stuff and scoring goals, and has an appetite for it that you can't sort of measure. Whereas maybe Raggett, for whatever reason, has a different personality type or whatever the case may be, just doesn't want it as much. Or it could be basically like a technical thing. It might be the fact that Flint is better at directing his headers into the goal than Raggett, because he's going to be getting first contact on a lot of set pieces here. Crawley are small, Rotherham are big. Steve Evans is kind of, I think, almost by his own admittal, in a bit of a last chance saloon. He's done a big video over international break, talking to the fans and saying, look, myself and the chairman just want the best for the club. And I think what's best for the club would be for them to absolutely squash Crawley this weekend. Just go full Steve Evans ball. pump the ball into the box at every opportunity, expose Crawley's clear weakness, and Sean Raggett should be, to my eyes, getting on the end of a lot of set-piece opportunities here. So at 10-1, Sean Raggett anytime is my long shot. We've got an unders quad at 9-1 as well. Back to the unders quad. Well, where are you going?
Quadwell. Sounds like it could be a player. West Brom, Norwich, my first one. Norwich's attacking output has really dropped off since the injury to Josh Sargent and various other players out, such as Marcelino and Nunez, up against a baggy side who aren't in particularly good form either. Against at home this season, West Brom's games have been 0-0, 0-0, 0-1, 0-0, 1-0, 1-0, 0-0. So, yeah, need I really say much more about that? And then I've got Derby travelling to Preston North End as my other one. This is mainly a Derby thing. Again, a team that I don't associate on the road with too many goals. It hasn't really played out for a great amount this season, but we've already seen them go to Sheffield United and Sunderland and lose games 1-0 and 2-0. Preston, after a decent return, well, after Paul Heckingbottom came in, there was clearly an uptick in their performance levels. But it seems to have maybe worn off a little bit. Hosting Sunderland last time at home, it was a 0-0 draw. It just feels to me a kind of an unders game, shall we say. So 2 in the Championship for me, 2 from the top, 2 from the bottom 2 for you.
Correct. Huddersfield Charlton is the first one. I got to shout out Eamon from NTT20 squad. Not the Eamon that had a very random one-off hit in the 2000s with... Did Eamon do FU or did he do FU right back?
He did FU. He did FU. Then his ex-girlfriend allegedly did FU right back.
That was a remarkable time. A remarkable time for music.
I wonder what Eamon's up to now.
Well, I say it's not him on NTT20 squad, but I don't know that for sure.
You don't know that?
Like, it could be.
Yeah.
Eamon from NTT20 squad does some amazing stat gathering for all 3 leagues, builds these incredible spreadsheets with obviously results, but also XG, both teams to score, under 2.5, over 2.5 goals, stuff, etc. And he's very generously been sharing his work on NTT20 squad this year. And it's quite hard to ignore when you look at some of Eamon's screenshots, some of his stats work. It's hard to ignore stuff like Charlton's under 2.5 record this season being 10 of 14. They go away to Huddersfield. It's so difficult for me to expect an open game here. I'm expecting the opposite, a tight game, a 0-0 or 1-0 either way, 1-1 at most. So unders Huddersfield, Charlton. And then Gillingham, Harrogate in League 2. First thing to say is I find it difficult to imagine Harrogate causing Gills too many problems in attack away from home. They're quite poor. Gillingham's change of shape in their previous 1 or 2 League 2 games has been a move to being more solid, less open, more structured, and combined, these 2 teams have had 66% of their games this season going under 2.5 goals. Gills' last league game against Vale was a 1-0 win. They had 4 shots, 1 on target. Vale had 5 shots, none on target. I'd expect them to have a bit more joy against Harrogate, but that just goes to show what Gills are going for at the moment. So under 2.5 goals, Gills and Harrogate.
What did you say Eamon's name is?
Eamon.
Do we know his surname?
Yeah. What's the singer's surname?
Eamon Doyle, born September 19th, 1983, known mononymously as Eamon, is an American singer-songwriter. He is mainly known for his 2003 hit single, F It, I Don't Want You Back.
Well, I haven't asked Eamon from the squad if I can reveal his full name. What I will say, at first I was going to be like, wow, Doyle, this guy's got quite an Irish surname as well. And then I realised the first name's a bit of a giveaway there. Anyway, a fantastic song maker and a statistician as well. Do join NTT20 squad if that sounds like the sort of thing you're into, by the way. Go on and recap your selections for me before we head off into a weekend that I've got a pretty good feeling about.
Oh, no. Normally you say you want to have a terrible week, and it does all right. My nap is Bristol City at even money, draw no bet at home to Burnley. Stockport to beat Burton away from home at even money again with AK bets is my next best. Georgie Chakvatedze at 4-1 anytime is my goal scorer for Watford. And then Walsall to beat AFC Wimbledon to 0 away from home at 5-1 is my long shot.
Millwall, my nap 6-4 to beat Sunderland at the Den. Bolton 10-11 to win at home to Blackpool. My goal scorer, Alessandro Jatta of Notts County at 11-8. The long shot, Sean Raggett at 10-1. The under squad at 9.
Rag and bone man.
Is, for me, Huddersfield, Charlton and Gillingham, Harrogate. And your two under 2.5 goals picks, George, are as follows.
West Bromwich Albion at home to Norwich City. Preston. Oh, we're so nearly through it. Preston North End and at home to Derby County. And you can keep that in.
Press the weekend button. Thank you to AK Bets for their sponsorship of this podcast and for either matching or going top price on all of our picks. I hope you guys have a terrible weekend. I hope that you forget your warm winter hat and freeze at the football. I hope that you drink your Bovril too early and burn your tongue, giving you the old cold head, burned tongue situation. And most of all, I hope that at some point this weekend, you have to listen to a Manchester United fan who'd never heard of Ruben Amorim until this month, calling him the second special one after a 3-1 win at home to Ipswich Town. Thanks very much for listening. Go very well.